So I'll just take a moment to introduce our presenter tonight. Cassidy is a grade 1 teacher in Moose Jaw, and I've always been really fascinated by Cassie and her work with grade 1s and 2s and how she uses social media to have them practice appropriate and responsible online behavior and the amazing things that she can do with such young children. Just even as a middle years and high school teacher, I was always able to use a lot of the stuff that I had learned from Cassie in my classroom, and felt, well, if the grade 1s can do it, my grade 7s and 8s can do it too. So thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm sure there'll be people popping in as 7 o'clock rolls around, and I'll hand over the microphone to Cassie. So thank you all for joining us.
Okay, now I need a check to say, make sure you're hearing me, because it's no fun to be chatting on and then have somebody say, oh, you forgot to do your microphone or something like that. So somebody give me a yes if you can hear what I'm saying. Yay, thank you. This is a small group, and so I feel like for me to just be just yammering at you is maybe not the best way to do this. I'm wondering if we should, hello Stella, I'm wondering if we should instead, well, maybe there's a few more people coming. Anyway, please feel free as we're going through this to put questions or comments that you have in the chat, and I will do my very best to watch those while I'm talking. If I miss a question, I hope that Joanna is watching and will interrupt me. I will have some places where I stop sort of naturally to look at the questions, because that's usually the kinds of places that people have questions. So if you feel free to do that, to have questions and comments, I really appreciate that. It makes me feel like you're listening and you're actually interested there. So great that you're here too, Jade, and you're here as much as you can. So I want to talk about digital citizenship with early years kids. I think this is really important, and they too can be involved in this, and I'm going to tell you my own experiences and what has worked for me, and then we can discuss what could work for you as well. These are some places that you can find me online if you choose to. If you could just, hold on, I forgot to get one link that I need for tonight, and it's the link to, oh dear, I wonder if, Joanna, do you have the link that I shared last time for this session? I forgot to get it up in my Google Docs, and so if you have that, if you could put that into the chat, I'd really appreciate it. Do you have that? Okay, good. Okay, because I can look for it, but I can't talk and look for it. I am a one-track mind kind of a person. So I hope to talk about 3 tools in particular tonight that I use with my students. 2 of them are social media, and one is a bit more protected, and I think it's a good place to start thinking about the possibilities of what's available. I should start out by saying one-to-one in my classroom, and yes, I'm very fortunate to do that, and no, my school board didn't provide me with that opportunity. I was fortunate to win a contest from Best Buy Canada a couple of years ago, and they provided me with $20,000 to buy technology, and so I chose to buy a class set of iPads. Joanna actually won this a couple of years before I did. And no, I'm sorry to say that that contest is no longer running, because that's what everybody wants to know. It seems like I broke the bank and they didn't have it the year after I was involved in it. So so that's how I was able to go one-to-one, and there's not really any plan in place to continue this if my iPads eventually they will wear out, and there's not really any plan in place. So I'm very fortunate right now, and I'm just enjoying it. So I'm coming from that lens, but I want you to know that I haven't always been one-to-one. I started getting involved in social media with grade 1 in 2005, and I have taught with only access in the computer lab. I've accessed social media, and I've taught with 5 or 3 or 2 computers in my classroom. We've made it work. And I know of a teacher in Brisbane who has been able to connect her kindergarten classroom with only her smartphone because there's no internet available in her classroom. So it is possible to do no matter what access you have. So although I can do more things because we have more tools, it's not just because of the tools that I'm doing this. And thank you, Joanna, for sharing that that link. So if what I'm saying is not interesting, feel free to have a look at that Google Doc and check out the things that are on there. And those are the things that anything that I talk about, there's going to be a link to on that. So the first thing we have to talk about, I think, is why do we want to do digital citizenship? And can I just talk at this point about something in this slide? I want you to notice how the students are sitting. This happens time and time again in my classroom. These kids never want to work on their iPads all by themselves. If they've got some extra time when they're finished their work or whenever they're working, they don't want to work by themselves. People say that technology is something that separates kids, but the kids clump together every time. Last year my kids wanted to clump together in a row. They would all sit in a row so they could all see. This year's class seems to be more in like a circle kind of thing, but they all want to clump together. And sometimes there's more than one clump or just one big clump because they all want to see what their friends are doing on their iPads and say, oh, what are you doing? Show me how you did that, and back and forth with each other. So now back to what I'm supposed to be talking about. Why would we want to do digital citizenship when these kids are so young? I think their world is going to be digital. They have seen digital things since the time they were born, and the world will only continue to be more digital as they are growing up. So I think that we need to begin to prepare them for that world that they will be a part of. There won't be less technology as they grow up. There will only be more technology. The world will be full of it. And another reason is that the kids are already online. This year, all of my students have access to the internet at home in some form or another. Mostly they have computers, but about half of my kids have a tablet or a tablet and a computer. And I don't teach at an upper class school by any means. It would be middle and lower income. I think that we need to think about what's appropriate when the kids are online, because this isn't always happening at this point. And the parents, I have also found, really are happy to have me talk to them about where to draw the line. They don't want me to make the decision, but they want to hear what I have to say about drawing the line. There's not clear boundaries in the online world, and they want to know what I'm thinking on this. They might not think the same, but they really would like to have my input on that. They're bombarded with social media, and they have smartphones, and they want what's best for their kids. They are overwhelmed, some of them, by the choices that they have, and they're happy to have their teachers' opinions. So what does it look like in the earlier years? Digitalcitizenship.net says appropriate and responsible. That's what digital citizenship is. It's the appropriate and responsible use of online. So digital citizenship is something that my kids can't even say. They have no idea what citizenship is. In fact, they argue with each other. I've heard them arguing about whether we live in Moose Jaw or if we live in Canada. They they can't conceive that we can live in both, because we live in one place or we live in the other. And so the whole idea of citizenship is something that they'll struggle with and come to an understanding of as they get older. But they can still learn to be nice. They can still learn to be kind. They can still learn things about being safe and being protected and what's appropriate. And those things are the things that we need to start teaching them. I want to start by talking about safety online. This is always the elephant in the room when you're talking about digital safety with early year students. Being responsible with this age group is even more important than with older kids, and you need to think it through and before you do it, so that you know what you're doing. And I think you don't have to have a walled garden, you just have to have safety in place. Now, maybe some of you haven't heard that term, walled garden. A walled garden would refer to a place where students could go online, but they could only see other people in their class or maybe other people in their school. Generally, it's a very small community. Now, I'm not a fan of that, because I don't think it teaches kids how to actually act in the real world. I want my kids to learn what's appropriate out in the digital space where they will actually be a part of. And so I put safeguards in place and teaching in place that will help them with that. And as we go through tonight, I'll talk to you about how I handle that in the different social media and sites that we're a part of. But the first thing I think you need to start off, regardless of anything else, is parental permission. So in my school division, a note goes home the very first day of school. And that note says, can the kids go on the internet? And the parents have to check yes. And are the kids allowed to post? And are you okay with, I think, newspapers is part of the, and TV, in case somebody comes into the school, is part of that. It's part of a whole permission thing that goes home. One of the links on that Google document is to the internet page, not the internet page, it's to the form that my school division actually uses as their online permission form. And yes, now it is actually part of our registration, but it goes home with anybody who somehow missed that. And so I get those forms, and for the most part, I've got to admit that most of the parents just check yes, 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 because it's part of about 8 pages that they have to fill out. And so they want to get it done, and so they just check yes, yes, yes. So I have the parental permission first before we post anything online. Then I invite the parents into the classroom. Now, because I had that parental permission, I generally set up blogs for my students that use their first name, and I say, and then I have them make up a post, a writing post for that first blog post. And I invite the parents, that generally happens in the first week. Whenever I can get all of those permission slips, I make sure I have everybody's okay. And if I don't, then I call them and say, this is what I want to do. And then the next week, the second week, or sometimes the third week of school, I invite the parents in. And probably if you teach grade 1, you have the same sort of thing where you want to teach the parents how kids learn to read and how they can help their kids learn to read. What are some things they can expect in math? How do you want to handle birthdays in the classroom? Things like that. So I invite them in to see the classroom and to meet me. Parents are usually very keen. And as part of that, I always show them our classroom blog. And I show them what I post, what I've done in the past. I show them the kids' blogs that they've already set up. And I say, you know, this is what your permission allowed me to do. And if some of them have a problem, then I have what are you comfortable with? And we have a discussion about it. Now, in This is an example of what I would show them. So this was Ryder's first post this past fall. His post looked like, maybe you can't see it because of the little doodads that are there, but he's got a capital I and a capital Y, and that was his writing. And he said it was about a book, and he told me that it said, "I read a book yesterday." And so the brackets are mine. So Ryder was put the I and the Y, and to him that said, "I read a book yesterday." And because I put the brackets, anybody could read what he wanted it to say and could communicate back to him. And so actually at that parent night, I have the parents comment back to their children. Now that we have the iPads, they've got a technology there, and I have them comment on their child's blog right on that night, so they know the process and how that works. I've been doing this, as I said, since 2005. I first started my blog. And honestly, that was before there was any hubbub about young kids shouldn't be online. And then after that, there started to be more and more of a, oh no, what are we doing with young kids online? And now I think it's sort of dying off, and more people are realizing, well, they're online anyway. Their parents are letting them, and so why are we kicking up such a big fuss about this? We may as well do it in a way that helps them with their learning. Although not everybody is there yet. In all those years, since 2005, I have only had one parent who was opposed to having their child involved at first. Once I explained what things I have in place, and here are my rules. So my first rule is nothing, but nothing gets posted until I see it first. So for instance, on their blog, every post has to be approved by me before it goes online. And every comment has to be approved before it goes online as well. And I'll talk a little bit later about how I do that. When we use Twitter, which is one of the tools we use in my classroom, nothing gets tweeted unless I see it first. So I'm helping them to develop that digital citizenship model by viewing it first so that they know if it was, I can help them to make sure it's appropriate, and quite honestly, I can help them to make sure that it's readable by the general public. So nothing gets posted unless I see it first. My other rule is that I do post the kids' first names because this is Ryder's blog. And I do post the students' names on my blog, the students' pictures on my blog, but I never match a name and a face. And there are no last names that ever appear. So those are the foundational things that I share with the parents. And once I have explained those things, the first year I put pictures on the blog, I had one parent who was very leery about putting the picture on. And I said to her, that's fine, I just won't include your child in any pictures. And by Christmas of that year, she came to me and said, you know, I'm fine with my daughter's picture being online. I see that you are actually being very careful and you're not matching the names, and I want my daughter to be part of that. If I ever did have a parent who didn't want their child's picture, I'd just say, fine, I won't ever post a picture that has your child in it. And if they didn't want their child's name on their first name online, that would be fine with me too. I would just choose a pseudonym for that child online. I already have their blog online probably but I would just, delete that content, put it back onto another blog post instead, and have that under a pseudonym. But I have never had to do that because the parents have always been on board. And I'll talk about this a bit later as we go on, but for instance, if a parent posts their last name on a comment, we read the comment, love it, appreciate it, applaud it, but we delete it because we don't want to match a name and a face. So this is, as I said, it's always the elephant in the room. So I wonder if you have any comments or questions about this. Do you disagree with this? Do you want to push back at me about this? I'm happy to entertain any of those things. So I'm going to stop talking for a bit, and if you have any questions, type them in. If you have pushback, I'd be happy to entertain that too. I did not start blogging at 14. Okay, we will talk about the Twitter interactions. That's coming up. But before I talk about Twitter, I want to talk about what I think is a good starting place for teaching kids about being digital citizenship, and that's video conferencing. Because video conference, parents whose objections are religious. I have honestly never had someone who had a religious objection to being online in my class, and I'm not sure what that would be. Perhaps if you would like to expand on that more, T. Grant T. Yeah, sorry, I know nothing about that. Haven't encountered that. Yep, Skype is one of the video conferencing tools we use. Sometimes people can't use Skype for whatever reason, but they can use Google Hangouts. That is also a possibility because sometimes people like Skype, sometimes they like Google Hangout. I generally find that more people want to use Skype. It seems to be a bit more popular than Google Hangouts, but both work. I really like it as an entry point in primary because there's no reading or writing required. All you have to do is talk. And before we have our first sessions, I always talk about what's appropriate behavior, the being smart part. It's usually behavior oriented. What would you want, if they were recording this, what would we want it to look like? I have photo booth on my Mac computer, and so I show them ahead of time, this is what you'll look like, and will it look good if we're all waving our arms? And we try to keep the first call really short and sweet, but as time goes on, we don't just use it for fun, but we use it for learning and for meeting other classes. For example, we use it to talk to experts. Rocks used to be in my grade 1 curriculum, and so I would have the kids Skype with a geologist, and she would answer the questions we had about rocks. This particular picture was taken when we were Skyping with a nurse and asking questions about our heart and brains and lungs. That's in our new health curriculum. We've also Skyped with kids who are experts on their own community when I had a grade 2 classroom. We Skyped with people about their jobs. Anyone who is an expert on something, and we ask them questions. We've used Skype for Readers Theater with classes perhaps in the state and the U.S. We've done that mostly to practice our reading fluency. We have read to people. I found especially that university students are really good for this. You can never get enough time in the early years to have somebody listening to kids actually reading. And so one way to solve that is to have somebody who's willing to listen through Skype. So I just make a list of the kids who are going to do the reading that day, put it on a piece of chart paper, put it up beside the computer so that whoever's finished can look and see who's after their name, and they can go get them, and they just take turns reading to the person who is online there. Now, you might not be able to get university students, but there might be grandmothers who aren't able to come in but will be willing to listen to kids read, or aunts or uncles, parents who can do it in their lunch hour. Lots of possibilities for that. we've practiced phonics via Skype. In this instance, we were practicing the silent E at the end of the word, so we were making up fake words, and they were making up fake words, and we were trying to read each other's fake words. We've practiced math skills. For example, in this picture, we're playing a game that's the heaviest and the lightest game, and we're playing it with actually Karen Lyerman's class, who is a teacher, grade 1 teacher in Surrey, BC. Both classes would try to guess which was the heaviest and which is the lightest of the two objects, and then we would weigh it in front of the camera for the other class to see at the same time. Before we weighed it, we always did a prediction. Put your hands on your head if you think this item is the heaviest. Put your hands in your lap if you think that item is the heaviest. And put one hand in your head and one in your lap if you're not sure. So everybody was involved, and then we'd find out which one was the heaviest or the lightest. We played a longer, shorter game in a similar way, where we had to predict first, and then we got to find out which one was longer or shorter. They would have one item and we'd have an item. We played a game with the same game with capacity. Which one do you think holds the most? And we would have to guess. We played mystery number Skype, where each class had a secret number, and the other class had to guess the number that the other class had by asking good questions. So it's better to say, is it more than 10, than to say, is it 16, for example. So the kids got better at that as the time went on. It's all about learning to learn with others who are not in your classroom. So we can use the internet to help our learning. As I said, this is not really a social media tool, but it's an entry tool for and an appropriate entry tool for young children in learning how to learn together with other people. So I'm just going to make a little pause here and see what the questions are. Okay, as far as the previous year's blogs, that's a very good question. Those blogs are still online. I tell the parents that they should bookmark those because they will stay online, but after the year they're in my class, they're no longer connected to my blog. So they're just going to be what's called an orphan. It's just there with nothing really linked to it. But if the parents have bookmarked it, they can still find it. If a teacher is blogging in the class that the students go to, they can move the blog from mine. We can move it from mine and it can go to their class, so the blog can stay the same. I use EduBlogs, and so you can do that. If they're both using the same blogging tool, that can work. So no, I never delete their info. It stays online, and that they still have access to it, so that the kids will be able to go back when they're in grade 12 and see what they posted online in grade 1. Yeah, I don't know what happened with that. Oh, that's a good link. I'll have to check out the Google field trips. So this mystery Skype, Christina, that you've got a link to here, is that a mystery location Skype or is that a mystery number Skype? Because what I've discovered is that I don't think mystery location Skypes work really well for kids who, as I say, are arguing about whether they live in Moose Jaw or in Canada. They don't really have a sense of maps yet, but I saw once that somebody had done some kind of a mystery number thing, and that really made sense to me for my young kids. Yes, and parents can be great experts. There are some really good things that you can use. I saw something one time that you could get people who are willing to talk to your class about sharks, for example. And how do I find those people? Well, the nurse is my sister, so that I've coerced into doing that for me several years in a row now. The geology person I asked on Skype, does anybody know of, on Twitter, does anybody know of somebody who'd be willing to? And somebody contacted me and said, did you find someone? Because I know this geologist and she did a great job for us. She was just a young one who did it. And yes, Authors Who Skype is another great site that I often suggest people go to. You know, you could try just Googling that, ask on Twitter. Another great place is Skype in the Classroom. There's lots of resources on there for places that people that are willing to Skype with you and your class. Or you might have access to someone that you know, and you just say, like, would you be willing to go on Skype and do it, like I do with my first sister. So just use what you can. You know, we used to be able to get a public health nurse to come in, and that can't happen anymore. So now we have to bring in experts in this way. Any other questions about that particular tool? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Let's see anybody writing. Okay. Now let's talk about blogging. You know, honestly, if you had to take away all the tools that I have in my classroom and only leave me with one, the blog is what I would choose, because it is so powerful for my students in terms of how they see themselves. This is my classroom blog. It's what it looks like, and yes, I do have more students than appear in that picture at the top. It just happened that I could get everybody together for an outside picture on that day, and there was some kids missing, and anyway. So I do have more than whatever, 16 students or whatever in that picture. The most important part to me of my classroom blog is not what you see on the left-hand side, the pictures of the baby pheasants or the video of when we were reading to the kindergarten kids. The most important thing are these, the links to the student blogs. And that's one of the reasons I like EduBlogs as my tool, because it automatically, when I set up my account, gives my kids blogs right on the side. They just automatically list there. And so people who come to my blog can go and visit the students' blogs automatically. This is one of my students' blogs from this year. So you can see that Adam says he likes practicing on his bike with no training wheels. His favorite thing is reading, and he likes to watch Mario videos. So you know something about Adam. And then you can see that he's posting some artifacts on his blog about his learning. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that we've done in a minute. I purposefully don't edit what my grade 1s put online. I put a little editor's note to say this is what they meant to say, as I showed in an earlier slide, but I don't make it be perfect. I wanted to show where they're at so that you can see the growth from the first week of school until the end. When I teach a 1-2 split, and I have done that sometimes, I expect more in terms of editing from the grade 2s, but for grade 1s, it's more about a product. It's about getting something out there and being willing to write and to just do your best. So then it becomes a discussion about what, for the grade 2s, it's a discussion about this is something that's going to be online. And we do talk frequently, even with just my grade 1s, we talk about people are going to see our work and the fact that they're putting their best stuff out there because you want people to see it. Now, 6-year-olds think that they're awesome at everything, and I encourage that. And so we post it all. And I encourage them to post things that are interesting to them as well. Now, this year the kids haven't done that, but last year I had a lot of kids who were really into creating things with Lego, and they were into building towers, and they wanted to take pictures of that with their iPads and post that. And I encourage that. I just ask them to show me first, and I say, yep, go ahead and do that. So they can post things that are of interest to them, and that is part of their learning because it's important to them. The comments that my kids get give the kids a chance to know that they have an audience for their work. So as I said earlier, if a parent or somebody else who has the same last name as my students post the comment, we read it, celebrate it, and delete it, and then I email the parent and say, thanks for the comment, we read it and enjoyed it, but I wasn't able to post it. I explain that. If you create something that's digital, it can be shared, and so that's the purpose. You want to share it, and you want to know what people think, and so that's what commenting is all about. And I think it's important to try to get comments for kids. They don't have to get comments all the time, but you want every child to get some comments. I have been very blessed a couple of times to have someone that I had never met comment on every one of my students' posts. Not every one of their posts, every one of their blogs. They left one comment for every child. And that's very exciting. Parents comment, grandparents comment, aunts and uncles, random people. Sometimes I've had university students involved in commenting. And commenting is a part of digital citizenship. It's a skill. And this is generally the way that we approach commenting in my classroom. We make a chart together every year, but generally it looks like this, that you start with something nice, and then you make a connection to you, because connections is an important part of the grade 1 curriculum in Saskatchewan for grade 1s. Then you want to ask a connection, what do you wonder about it, and then you'll see that on this poster, rereading was added later, because the kids began to realize that, oh, sometimes we accidentally posted something and we could have made it better. So now they say that we should then they would say that we always need to reread, and so that became part of the chart, that was important, that you reread it before you put it online. And really, all of us need to make sure we do that. There's some adults who don't have a filter, I think, sometimes, and I've posted things that I've regretted sometimes and had on Twitter and had to go back and delete. So rereading is always a good thing to do. And I want it, and so the kids and I talk about that. When we get comments, this is how we read our comments. Generally, the comments are approved together. So we read the comments. I project them. I happen to have a smartboard, but that's not necessary. We post the comment. We put them on the projector. There's a word for that is escaping me at the moment. We project them so that everybody can see them. And I at first am pointing to the words because my kids come to me as pre-readers. But as soon as somebody can do that, then I turn it over to the kids, and they're pointing to the words, and we're reading together. This becomes our shared reading time. And shared reading is a very tried and true way, well-researched way for kids to learn to read. In my classroom, shared reading used to be reading a big book or reading a chart on chart paper, a poem that I had written out by hand. And those still sometimes come up in my book, in my classroom, but more often it's these comments that are written right to a student or to one of their classmates that we're reading out loud, and that we're actually sometimes finding mistakes in. My kids are so thrilled when they can find a mistake that somebody else has made, that they realize that person forgot a period, or they forgot to put a capital on the word I. And they're so excited when they realize that other people make those mistakes. So we read the comment, and then together we decide, is that a good comment? And then if it is, we approve it right there, and it goes on their blog. Now I should say that in all these years that I have been doing this, the tool that I used to use, at some points was getting a lot of spam, and my kids could instantly recognize that. Delete it, it's spam. They knew that wasn't words, that was spam. They'd say spam as soon as it went up on the board, and we'd just delete it. But now we're reading a comment, and they look at me and they're quizzical. They say, that person just wanted to put a link to their blog, didn't they? It wasn't about my article. And I have to say, yes, you're right, it wasn't. And so do we want to post that? No, they didn't think that was an appropriate thing to do. And they're right, it absolutely isn't. So those are the ones that we delete and we don't post. And I have never had anything on them that wasn't appropriate for my kids to read. That hasn't ever been a problem for us. So that's how we approach comments. That's what it looks like. So we share on our blogs a lot of things that we're learning. We share our writing and we share our drawing, and we get to see the things that are happening in the kid's life. So this says, I'm going to my dad's house. My dad's house is yellow, my favorite. So you know something about the student who posted this on his blog. So we post writing and drawing. We also share screencasts that we're able to make with our iPads now, where the kids can actually be talking and showing something at the same time. We've posted pictures of their artwork. We do podcasts that show their reading fluency. We label images to show what we're learning. And all of these examples are ways that earlier years kids can show their learning. There's lots of other ways. These are just some of them that we use. I always say that anything that has an embed code can be shared. And for us, that means that anything on our iPads that we can get to the camera roll, we can put onto the EduBlogs app, because it will automatically make an HTML code for us. Truthfully, it's ridiculously easy to share stuff online now. When I compare it to when I started, how I had to take pictures, I had to put those onto Flickr, I had to grab the code, I had to log in as a student and post it on. Now it's just so easy compared to how it used to be, and it's easier all the time. So my students' blogs become digital portfolios of their work from the first week of school to the last week of school. So it's obviously, it's easy if a 6-year-old can do it. So I'm going to go on talk now about Twitter, finally. I can't remember who it was who wanted to talk about Twitter, but here we are. So this is my classroom Twitter account. I keep my classroom Twitter account totally separate from my personal Twitter account. I'm Cassidy on Twitter, but this is my my classroom account. And I think that the key, as you can see here from how many people we're following, is who you follow. We don't follow everybody who follows us. We only follow people who are going to help our learning. We tweet about the things that we're learning, about what's happening in our classroom. We read tweets, we ask questions, and as I said, the key is who you follow. We're following mostly classrooms, and we get to know those classrooms and the interesting things that they're doing. We're also doing a living things inquiry right now, and so we're following a couple of accounts that are tweeting pictures of animals. One is the San Diego Zoo, and there's another site, it's called Animal Photos or something like that. You could look at who we're following to find out who it is. They just start tweeting mostly pictures of animals with a little bit of text, and so that's appropriate for my students, and so I'll follow them now, and then I'll probably take them off before the fall starts, and I might put somebody else on who that is, if they're tweeting something about what we're studying in the fall. I keep it to kid-appropriate content, and we're not retweeting others very much. We're just mostly reading what the kids say, what other people say, and responding back to that. Just like when we read comments, we're reading the tweets together and then deciding, do we want to respond to this? Is it something we want to respond to? Then we reply together, and it becomes a shared writing experience as well as a shared reading experience. So sometimes people have a daily tweeter. That's not how I do it in my classroom. It tends to be if something happens and somebody wants to tweet about it, or I might say, does somebody want to tweet about this if I think it's an interesting thing. It just depends on what's happening together. We go sometimes several days without tweeting just because nobody has been interested in tweeting, and that's fine. It's not something that I require that we do. We mostly, I set up Twitter originally for parents to follow us, but honestly, most of the parents aren't on Twitter. They're actually on Facebook. And so this year, for the first time, I did set up a Facebook page off of my Facebook page. where I just sort of post, every time I put something on the blog, I put it on the Facebook, and that really seems to connect with the parents. Although what I discovered about that is that I don't really have control over their comments like I do in the other online spaces. I don't have control over if, for instance, someone could post, and did actually once this year, post the name of somebody in a picture, and then I had to delete that. So that's an interesting, and that's something an ongoing conversation I'm having with myself and with other people about what's happening. So we read the tweets together for the first while, and then as the year goes on, the kids become better readers. They read by themselves, or sort of, because you can see Twitter is something that the kids like to do together. They want to share tweets with each other, and I just opened up the other day, Twitter as a reading choice during our read to self time, and the kids were all over it, but the problem was it was no longer read to self, because somehow Twitter is such a social thing. They wanted to share with each other what tweets they were seeing, what they were reading there, and so it wasn't exactly a subdued kind of read to self time like I was trying to achieve. But I want to show you an example of a learning experience that we had on Twitter a little bit earlier this season. And here is a tweet that we actually saw on our timeline. It was Karen Lyman's class. Somebody says, "Hi, my name's Carmen. The salmon eggs are bigger." And my kids said to me, "What's salmon?" And I said, "Why don't you ask what salmon is?" So we did. We tweeted back to them, and Cohen did it. And so he said, "What is salmon? How huge are they?" And because I wasn't sure if Karen would remember what the tweet was, I added the brackets there just to make sure that she would know what we were talking about. And then we got this response from them: "Salmon is a kind of fish. Here's a picture." And my kids, oh, they were so excited. I knew about that. I eat salmon. And all of a sudden, the lights went on. And the fact that these guys had eggs in their classroom that were going to be fish. Did fish come from eggs? They were very excited about this. And it was serendipitous learning that happened because of what had happened on Twitter. It wasn't something that I had prescripted. It was just something that happened, and they serendipitously learned from that. Sometimes we use hashtags. For example, when we were learning to write riddles, we put them. I wanted them to be aggregated together so that I could post them. In that case, I just wanted to aggregate them so I could post them together on our blog, and so we all used a hashtag that we made up together. Sometimes we've tweeted with other classes. For example, we tweeted with other classes at Christmas time and did secrets about Santa so that those could be aggregated together. We have tweeted with other classes near the 100th day of school. We wanted to make up 100 stories of 100. And we didn't think we could do 100 stories on our own, and sure enough we couldn't. But we got some other classes involved, and we were able to get over 100 tweets using the hashtag 100 stories of 100. And it was a very cool experience for my kids to see how were other people approaching this in their classroom. So we've also done live tweeting with some other classes. In this instance, we were watching a Discovery education thing about First Nations classes, and my kids were typing on Twitter using a hashtag the things that they were seeing and learning and questions that they had, and another class was doing it at the same time and learning together. And my kids were so impressed that these other kids had the same questions as they did, the things that they wondered about. Here's an interesting thing that happened after school last year. Last year we were following Chris Hadfield when he was up in space, and at the end of the school year I had one of the kids in my class who so wanted to continue to see what the cool things that Chris Hadfield was tweeting. He was so enamored of the videos of toenail clipping and the pictures of the earth that he was tweeting that he once set up his own Twitter account, and so his parents allowed him to do this. And so you can see that he's not tweeting, but he's just following. And the 3 people, I checked it out, the 3 people that he's following, and this is how I knew about it, says one is me, one is Chris Hadfield, and one is his grandmother, who doesn't really, got on Twitter but isn't really sure what to do with it, and so she's not really tweeting. So he's following me and he's following Chris Hadfield. And obviously the parents had to be involved because there's an email address involved in setting up on Twitter. I just thought it was interesting that here's a child that wanted to continue that learning, and I talked to his mom and she said yes, it was because of that astronaut. He wanted to keep seeing what that astronaut had to say. So that's Dion, and what Dion shared. What I learned from Dion is that kids really want to continue that learning in the summer. So I think we owe it to our students to prepare them for the world that they're going to be part of. In fact, not even younger than my kids, the links that I included on that digital citizenship Google Doc that Joanna put in the chat earlier. Could you put that in once more, please, Joanna, just in case people came in late? I'd appreciate that. One of the last links is a link to a kindergarten classroom that the teacher told me that she had seen what I'd done and thought it could be done with kindergartens, and so she's also doing it the same thing with kindergarten kids, and they look great. So it's not an age thing, it's something that we need to start teaching the kids. So that's the end of my ranting, and we're getting close to the top of the hour now. I want to know if you have any questions, reflections, rants, pushbacks, disagreements. I'm open to any of those things. Wow, you are a quiet group. I hope that means that I've answered every question. I'd like to think that, but I'd like to think I'd answered all the questions, but I'm sure I haven't. Anyway, if you do have questions, you can always get a hold of me at any of the places that I mentioned earlier. And here's some places where you can find me online. I'm always there if you have things that you're wondering about, or you're just starting your journey, or something you wonder. Ted had a question. Ted. Oh, good question about Twitter. Yes, what I've discovered is that on a tablet you can have at least up to 22. I've had 22 iPads all logged in fact 23, all, and my iPhone 24. You can have on a tablet lots of different places accessing the same account. Now, somebody told me that that's not the case on a computer, but I don't know if that's true or not. But yeah, I just have Twitter on my kids' iPads and it's logged in. I have logged it in. They don't know the password, but I have logged them all in to Twitter. So yeah, you can. Terrified Anna. You know, Anna, you don't have to do everything all at once. You just take small steps. That's what I always say. I just start with something that you feel comfortable with, Anna. If you don't feel comfortable with blogging at this point, maybe you feel comfortable to have a Twitter account, or maybe you feel comfortable with Skype, or something else I haven't even mentioned tonight. Take a small step. You don't have to dive into digital portfolios and a full blog like I have done. I did not start with all of this. I started with the blog was the first thing I started, but my intention was not that we would have digital portfolios. I just wanted a place to share with the parents what was happening, and then I wanted a place for the students to be able to write. And that's all they did, was they wrote. In fact, we just wrote for the first several years, and then I discovered, oh, well, if we can add pictures, we can add other things to this. Yes, it can be whatever you want it to be. Yes, Christina, that's a really good idea. I know many teachers who have a classroom blog, and sometimes the kids blog, sometimes the teacher blogs. So it's shared. It's a shared blog between the students and the teacher, and that can be a great way to start too. Oh, Marcy, great to have you. As to whether my students will continue their blogs with the teacher next year, that will depend whose classroom they're in, to tell you the truth. Not everyone at my school is on board with blogging at this point. I'm sure that's coming, though. I'm sure eventually we'll have some kind of form of all students being online. Right, Joanna? That'll come from the ministry eventually, right? Well, thanks for sharing that, Rachel. My kids made about Twitter. We actually may have one about Skype, and we have a YouTube video about blogging as well that I made with my children last year. And here's a very small plug. If you are interested, I have also actually written a book about connecting your classroom, and you can find a link to that on my professional blog if you want more information about that. Or I can just answer your questions. Yay!
Well, I don't know if there's many more questions. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Kathy for your session tonight. I think you've left us with a lot of food for thought and lots of great ideas. And thank you for being so open and willing to share in the future. And I saw a lot of people connecting even in the chat room about tweeting together and making some plans to connect. So I think you've inspired a lot of people to take some baby steps or even some bigger steps depending on what level they're at. And thanks so much, Kathy, for the great session tonight.
It was my pleasure. Now, if you have more questions and you didn't want to ask it while the recording was on, I'll stick around afterwards just in case you were shy about that.
And we'll stop the recording. So thanks again, everyone.